Hey, everybody. Welcome to this bonus episode of the Hired Geek Podcast, episode number 145, with Dean Lee Kump, Dean of the College of Earth and Mineral Sciences at Penn State University. So I was really grateful for Lee's time here on the show, giving his unique perspective as a dean of a college, which we just really haven't had on the show super often. So definitely was cool to talk with him about his work and how he affects the culture of innovation on his team and his community of curiosity, and his interest in diving and kind of leadership parallels with that. And Lee shares some resources to definitely check out, and yeah, just a unique perspective. So very grateful for his time and all that he shared. And a quick note, next month I will be at South by Southwest EDU in Austin. So if you will be there on ground, let me know. I'm super excited to check out Austin and meet with a bunch of fine folks, and be cool to meet fans of the show. So look forward to being there, recording a live podcast at the conference. So if you can't be there to be a part of that live episode, that is okay. I will eventually post the live audio from that panel to the podcast feed here. So look forward to that. But without further ado, let's get to this bonus episode of the podcast, episode number 145, with Dean Lee Kump. Right. I am honored to have, we have another esteemed guest here with us today, a dean of a college at Penn State. So super interesting point of view that I'll be really excited to explore, and a bunch of other stuff for today's episode. But we will start out as we always do. If Lee, you want to introduce yourself and give a brief overview of your professional background and how you get to be where you are today.
Okay. Well, thanks, Dustin. Really glad to be here. I'm Lee Kump. I'm the John Leone Dean of the College of Earth and Mineral Sciences at Penn State. We're a smaller college, but we like to think of ourselves as a microcosm of the university. We have physical sciences, engineering, and social sciences as well in our college. So interesting mix of disciplines focused on issues around environmental change, energy, advanced materials for society. I'm a geoscientist myself and oceanographer. I grew up in Minnesota. If you look at the globe, probably Minnesota is about as far as you can get from the ocean. But we did have televisions, and I watched Sea Hunt and Jacques Cousteau, and that got me excited to explore the oceans. I also liked solving mysteries. So somehow I ended up being an oceanographer, mostly studying ancient oceans and in deep time. So the mysteries that the geologic record has about how climate and the environment has evolved over time. So I came to Penn State in 1986 as a new assistant professor into a Earth System Science Center. It's one of the first at the institutional level across the country, focusing on the interactions between oceans, atmosphere, life, and the solid Earth, looking at major issues of global environmental change, and been affiliated with that group ever since. Really didn't come into it thinking I'd ever get into administration, but served as a department head in the Department of Geosciences, and then back in 2017 had the opportunity to become dean, and so spent my entire professional career at Penn State. So that's I have limited viewpoints, I suppose, from that point of view, but grew up in Minnesota, did my undergraduate work in Chicago, and my graduate work at the University of South Florida.
Awesome. Yeah. And I mean, being there at Penn State, even just being one place, it's a long time. So a lot, sort of changing over all that time and everything, just from, your first days as a professor all the way up to now. And I guess just, it could be a thing or many things, like you said, you didn't really intend, it wasn't like, oh, I'm coming here because I want to be dean one day or something. But now that you are, like, what's your favorite part of being a dean at a college at Penn State, maybe breaking each of those down, just being a dean in general and then being a dean at that college and then being a dean at Penn State. There's a lot of layers, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, I mean, like I said, I didn't aspire for this. And one of my concerns was that I would lose touch with students. What I've enjoyed over the course of my career is my work in the classroom, and because of the discipline I'm in, field work. And so I spent a lot of time traveling with students and especially sharing with them the marine environment. And so it's a little bit, it was with some trepidation that I went into this administrative role. But happily, I found that I continue to work with student leaders, really impressive group of students in our college, and with great vision and energy and enthusiasm and passion and then so in our college, because of this blending of disciplines, really have great opportunities for brainstorming with the faculty and empowering them to pursue really important lines of research, teaching, and outreach in these areas of global environmental change and energy for the world, and how we can bring new advanced materials to solve a lot of these problems. So it's been a great college to work with. Relatively small, we're agile faculty. When especially before the pandemic, but even through the pandemic, have been energized to innovate, and so it's been a great group of people to work with. Then the other part of it that was a surprise to me, because I figured that deans are always fighting turf battles with other deans, and my experience has been just the opposite. We have an incredibly collaborative group of deans across Penn State system, deans and chancellors of our Commonwealth campus system, but and then great opportunities for collaboration, and not just with the obvious colleges like engineering and science, but have a great collaboration with the law school around energy law and policy. So it's been really a nice surprise to find that we work so well together. We have a central administration, a president, and a provost who really promote collaboration. They are most receptive to new ideas and requests for resources when it comes from multiple deans to work at the interface of the disciplines to solve problems. So that's been just across the board, it's been a great experience for me. And I've come to really enjoy those interactions with people, bringing in new people with new connections, and working at those interfaces to really do some innovative things.
Yeah, that's really great. I mean, just that idea of like you can get kind of the best of all those worlds. I get, like still having some connection with students, but then working more collaboratively, like not just like, kind of in your own little, kind of sphere of influence or anything. And just, yeah, within your college and across colleges and everything. And just, yeah, it does sound like a really great environment.
And there's
Yeah.
also there's a being in this leadership position, I have influence too, and so there are a lot of things that I've thought about over the course of my career, things I would like to see happening at Penn State, and now I'm in a position to really effectuate those ideas. So there is there's satisfaction from that point of view as well. I'm not power hungry, but it's nice to be able to have the ear of the president, who is a former dean of my college and a longtime colleague of mine, and the provost is outstanding as well. So just have a great group of people to work with.
Yeah. Well, I guess, yeah, I mean, just the idea of like that you take that responsibility to like, well, we want to like, you know, drive things forward and innovate, like you were saying, and everything, just not just kind of maintaining, like, is that's an important part of sort of like just the ongoing maintenance of things. But yeah, especially given, the past 2 years, just recognizing the responsibility that you have as the dean to be that person, yeah, who's like kind of using their influence to yeah, make positive change and everything.
Well, and it's been a challenge, like you say, and in particular, you know, people are, I think, in all walks of life, but certainly true in academia, people are really challenged by the pandemic. There's extra work, there's stresses on the system, there are stresses at home, and so it's for the last almost 2 years now, it's been challenging to sustain that level of excitement for innovation. And there's a tendency to want to get into that maintenance mode, but we are in the midst of strategic planning, and I was really happy to see the level at which faculty, staff, and students were engaged in that process, knowing that if there's ever a time that we need to be strategic in our decision making, it's in the midst of a pandemic. But I think one of my responsibilities here, something I've been really focused on, is trying to minimize unnecessary burden on the faculty and staff, and trying to carve out time, because time is our most precious commodity, and with all of the new expectations on faculty and the challenges of compliance, and the concerns about export control, and it's just there's so much on a faculty member's plate that we have to try to streamline all of those processes and carve out that time where they can do what they do best, and that's to teach, to conduct their research, and to innovate and drive the institution forward.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess just because a lot of what we want to talk about is just sort of, your leadership style, how you're building kind of that culture and community there. I guess just as briefly as you can, because I want to get into like the question after this, because I feel like it's going to be such a unique conversation. How would you describe your leadership style? Like, I guess just as kind of concisely as you can, and then we'll get into some of the things I know that sort of influences, I think, your point of view.
Yeah, I think it's I'm a facilitator. I take we've talked about trying to carve out time and things like that, but I also feel like I'm paid to find time myself to look for opportunities that present themselves for our college, and then bring together the right people to take advantage of those opportunities, and help facilitate that with resources. So, my goal is to try to create an environment where our faculty, staff, and students can thrive. And I don't have a fixed agenda. I don't have specific goals. I'm not that kind of leader. I've been at this university now for 35 years, and so I have a pretty good sense of what's possible here. But it's more about empowering, facilitating, and listening, and bringing people together so that they can do great things.
Yeah, I'd love to hear that. But I know, based on kind of things that we're talking about to talk about for this podcast, in terms of just your leadership style and everything, I believe it is correct that you have a interest in deep sea diving, and that kind of plays into. And I love these sort of like sort of parallels, or kind of drawing life lessons from unexpected areas. So, how does your interest in deep sea diving play into how you kind of talk and act out kind of leadership and everything?
Yeah, and just to be clear, I'm not deep sea so much. In fact, most of my interest is in places where you can see the bottom through nice clear Caribbean or Pacific water, and in other words, through accessed by scuba. But it's that. I guess it's that spirit of exploration and discovery, the excitement of exploring new environments, and I think that translates into exploring new areas, new approaches, discovering solutions for important problems to society. I think I carry that same passion for that, for exploration into my work as dean, and try to share that passion with my colleagues and students, so I think, and there's risk management in that, and a certain amount of risk tolerance that I think is really important. I think one of the greatest risks to universities is becoming too risk averse, because we have to push things a bit to be able to make breakthroughs in a lot of areas, and so I have a pretty high risk tolerance, within limits. I am a dean and responsible for the financial health and the welfare of our community. But but I think, willing to take some risks, where's the potential for high reward is at least one connection there with my passion for diving. I don't crave going scuba diving anymore just for myself. I really only dive now when I can bring others into these environments, and in particular students. And even though I'm dean, I'm still teaching a class once every other year in marine biogeochemistry, and we have a field trip during spring break associated with that, where I can bring students into largely Caribbean environments to the proximity here, and so it's also translated into this, wanting to um, make sure that other people have these experiences as well.
Yeah, that's great. And I guess I apologize maybe for like the misappropriation of like deep sea diving, because I think like in my head immediately, like any sort of diving like that would just be like, oh, I'm so deep, I'm so like I have like an aversion generally to like being underwater, or like a lot of just things about being in the water. So yeah, kudos to you for
Well,
I
yeah,
mean doing that. Yeah.
it's not for everyone, and but there are ways to get exposure for everyone, and we do have people who work in the deep sea and go down in submersibles, and I would love to do that myself, but most of what I do is in the coastal ocean, and typically in nice warm environments these days. Although, like I said, I learned how to scuba dive in Minnesota, and we train our students to scuba dive in quarries and rivers and murky, cold environments here in central Pennsylvania. So,
Interesting. Um, Yeah, because but I think like this is a perfect segue to my next question. Just that idea that you don't just do it for yourself; you do it, with your community and to facilitate, um, you know, curiosity and just sort of uh, I guess an appreciation for just like what is possible. And I appreciate like it. Yeah, it's not the idea of being like uh, risk doesn't matter, we should ignore it. It's like it's just managing uh our own risk aversion, because yeah, I think there is that tendency of just wanting to kind of, you know, turtle up and just kind of like, never change anything, just keep doing things always the same way and all that, which just uh can't really be done now. But yeah, so I think it's something that I think is something that you work towards, is just this community of curiosity. What does that look like, as you strive to create it at Penn State?
yeah, it's interesting. I was just thinking about one of my favorite sayings, and that is that good judgment comes from experience, but experience comes from bad judgment. And when I think
Mm,
back over my career, a lot of the learning that I did was through some bad judgments that I made along the way that gave me that experience. And so, I think about that in a measured way, as a parent and as a faculty member, and now as a dean. So yeah, it's risk management. It's not carefree, throw caution to the wind type of behavior, but yeah, it's this. You mentioned a community of curiosity. Part of it is that it makes it so much more fun, to engender curiosity. There's a certain amount of knowledge one needs to I'm thinking now as a scientist, to have the curiosity channeled in a way that can lead to scientific breakthroughs and discoveries. But focusing on that, and emphasizing it and rewarding it. We have an award we give every year in our college, an endowed prize from one of our very successful alumni who also values innovation, and it's a breakthrough award, and so we receive nominations every year from anyone of their peers who they feel have made a major breakthrough in their research or in their pedagogy. It's wide open, and it's so much fun to celebrate those discoveries, and it snowballs. So when you give an award and recognize somebody who's developed a material that can, in a sense, cloak a cancer drug so that it can pass through the body without doing damage to bone or tissue until it finds a tumor, and then it disintegrates and releases the drug. When you hear about things like that, where research that you're doing in the laboratory can ultimately lead to a breakthrough that can save lives, that gets people thinking, I think, a little bit differently about the work they do, the possibilities there, where they might focus their efforts in their research, for example, on really important problems for that society is facing. It's very rewarding for the individuals involved, and it's also very rewarding for me to see that excitement and the hard work that people then put into their research and teaching to really make a difference. So, I think there are a variety of ways to promote curiosity, and in this community of curiosity, there's also a spirit of exploration and discovery and innovation, words that I've used quite a bit today, but it's all sort of part of that same spirit that you have within a college like ours, and it requires some agility and frankly resources to help support that. And so, that's where I put my efforts, is into making sure we have endowments and funding sources, and that others know about the work that we're doing, so that so we can continue to grow that community.
Yeah. Well, and it's great too, like, because I think so many people do just kind of talk a big game when it comes to, like, saying like, oh, we have like a community of curiosity, or, innovative culture and all that. But, you know, yeah, like a big way to really like put your money where your mouth is, kind of thing, is saying like, hey, we're going to highlight and uplift and celebrate the folks who are really living that out, and make it clear that that's something that is important, and uh, deserves to be recognized, and everyone sees that it's really important to the individual being recognized, and then everyone else is, witnessing that, and they can kind of strive towards that as well. And that can just be one sort of lever to utilize, in addition to, um, I'm assuming, sort of in your position, try to like help bring people together and talk, and because I know just like 30 minutes with a colleague, sometimes you can start connecting dots and having like really great epiphanies and everything. So
Yeah, and it's just carving out that time, finding,
mhm.
clearing people's plates from the mundane, routine, and unnecessary work, finding ways to carve out that time. But you also point out you need to put some resources into that. And one of the things I think our institution has done really successfully, where others haven't, and for example, you think about environmental science. There are environmental institutes and programs across the country. One thing that Penn State did, not exclusively, but I think very effectively, was put real money into its institutes for energy and the environment, and the real money was in co-hire funds, and so millions of dollars were channeled, frankly, through taxation on departments and colleges over many years of budget reduction, but then with opportunities to recoup those funds, as long as one was participating in university-wide initiatives. And so in energy and environment, in materials and life sciences, in social sciences, we have institutes that are well funded by the university with co-hires to be able to hire new faculty, in this particular case, to explore areas of in particular interdisciplinary collaboration, and that nudges what might otherwise be disciplinary siloed departments to think more broadly about the scope of what they do. And in our college, we've really capitalized on those opportunities for co-funding, because the university-wide themes that are represented by these institutes really resonate with with the folks in my college. So I think real investments, providing resources for personnel and for facilities are a key part of this success.
Yeah, that does sound like a really smart model, and it makes me think of like in a respect, like because yeah, it's sort of like saying like we are an institution. We're not just like, a bunch of islands sort of operating on their own. It's like to an extent, yes, like there's going to be such specialized, focused things happening in each sort of corner of campus. But, uh, you know, something that I always think about is sort of like the idea of rising tide lifts all ships kind of thing. It's like, hey, if we're all doing, you know, better together, or just sort of like working in a way that sort of makes sure that you understand that you're part of this university community, because it could be like, yeah, well, this larger college is able to just have the resources to do certain things, but like you said, like everybody giving a little bit helps everyone work towards these broader university goals, or just sort of things that are like, we're just doing them because it's the right thing to do, like be more sustainable, or be working in a way that's just smarter, more efficient.
Well, and
So
it also helps with prestige and reputation, and those sorts of things benefit everyone, in recruiting and retention, and in the success in their seeking of research funding, and the success of our alums to be affiliated with top-notch institutions. So I really do think there is that esprit de corps across campus, and there's a recognition, but it doesn't go so far as to um, ignore the needs of more traditional areas within the university, or areas that don't have the opportunity for generating multi-million-dollar research funding projects and that sort of thing. So it's an emphasis, but it's not at the exclusion of focus on the arts and humanities, for example, which our president has been very supportive of.
gotcha. Well, as we wind down, I think with everything that we've thought about, talked about and thought about here, uh, hopefully there's maybe some resources that you could shout out to share that have helped inform your perspectives, your work, any books, podcasts, videos that you'd want that we can include in the show notes.
Well, I'm very concerned about global change, as I've been mentioning, climate change, with my emphasis on the marine environment. I also know that you think about coral reefs, for example, they are in crisis mode right now. We're losing healthy coral reefs every year, and climate change is a big part of that. And so, I've been working with a colleague, Michael Mann, on a book, Dire Predictions, that is there just to help understand the causes of climate change, the impact, and then most importantly, what we can do about trying to mitigate against the potential damage that we're facing on a global basis. So, I just encourage everyone to get well informed about global change, and be thinking about how we're going to get to net zero carbon emissions. And there are any number of great resources out there. And in fact, it's time for Mike and me to update Dire Predictions. So we're working on that. I also really think that it's a time when we have to bring in diverse viewpoints and perspectives, and support the participation of with representation from across society. And I'm in a field myself, that or in a discipline that's very fieldwork heavy, and this has been a challenge, and a number of high profile examples of harassment and intimidation, in particular of women out in the field. And one thing I would encourage everyone to view is the documentary Picture a Scientist. I don't know if you've had a chance to view that yourself, but it discusses it has four just stellar women scientists who have faced a variety of challenges there, and including challenges around being a woman working in the field. And so I think, one of the things we have to do is to make sure that higher ed institutions, and in particular in the STEM disciplines, are as accessible and supportive and inclusive as possible. And that film, Picture a Scientist, is really a powerful exposition of the challenges that we face. So I would encourage people to watch that as well.
Yeah, great recommendations. And I just love those uh, pieces of content that really are just like highlighting people's voices and their stories. And I was just feel like that's really compelling. So I appreciate you sharing that. Uh, and yeah, I mean, I love just the sort of underlying uh, sort of topic in this episode of your work and everything on climate change and everything. Yeah, because that's something I kind of just am personally very interested in as well. So, uh, with all of that though, as we wind down here, we always like to just kind of give an opportunity for final thoughts or a call to action on this topic to end the episode with.
Well, I mean, I think we're with the Omicron variant now surging. It's been a real challenge these last couple of years for everyone. It's been a challenge for everyone in higher ed, and I just I think a call to action is just to stick with it, and we'll be out of this soon. And I think we are learning a lot over the course of the last couple of years, not just because of issues related to the coronavirus, but other important things that have happened over the last couple of years that I think are going to put us in a much better place when we emerge from the pandemic, and can really reignite our passions, as we've been discussing today, around discovery, exploration, drawing on curiosity. This is what and having fun doing it. And so I'm just looking toward the end of this long tunnel that we've been through, and knowing that in the position I am, I'm going to have to be there to try to help people get some of this, get this spirit back as soon as possible. So I think the message is just hang on. There's some important things that we need to do. We need to get through this first, but when we get clear of this pandemic, a lot of important work around energy and environment, and it's going to take the best minds and a very diverse set of perspectives to solve these problems.
Yeah, I love that sentiment. And I think my hope is that this has all taught us some lessons around kind of collective responsibility, and that we are uh, all living on this big rock together, and sort of our actions impact each other and everything. I think that's been very apparent over these past 2 years. And yeah, I mean, as we're recording this is about mid-January, and yeah, I mean, things just keep kind of ebbing and flowing so much.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
just a quick footnote to people to know, when we're talking here. But
Yeah,
yes.
maybe people will be listening and we'll be past the pandemic. That'd be great. But
Yeah.
I think for us too, for myself as a scientist, I love the phrase "follow the science," and I think we have learned, we have remembered as a society the importance of science in guiding policy and guiding decision making and planning for the future, and I hope we can sustain that beyond um, health-related issues, and extending into issues of environmental change and energy for the future.
Yeah. Well, and I think just the last note too is like, I think that's such a perfect way to phrase it too, is like follow the science, because it's like, yeah, it's going to keep leading us in new areas and uncharted territory and everything. Like it's not static, it's dynamic. Uh, so yes, a great place to end things. Just thank you so much for hanging out and sharing all that you did. And we have ways to connect with you and everything that we mentioned in the show notes as usual. But yeah, just really appreciate your time.
Well, thank you, Dustin. I've really enjoyed being with you today.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the podcast. Make sure to rate, review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode of the Higher Ed Geek podcast.